Red Bull has opened the season in the best possible way, but it seems like the team is aware that a dominance like this one won't happen again in the upcoming races in Jeddah and Australia. While Verstappen was flying ahead and Perez was able to outperform Leclerc with his strategy and pure pace, the RB19 won't have that huge of an advantage in tracks like Jeddah and Melbourne. And this is the perfect chance for Ferrari to strike back and take the momentum back into their own hands. The 2023 season started on a very negative note for Ferrari, with Leclerc suffering from reliability issues and Sainz being outpaced by the green RB18 of Fernando Alonso. Furthermore, the smooth operator was very close to being overtaken by Hamilton, with the 7-time world champion driving a car that struggled massively to gain a decent amount of downforce, which didn't show to be a great sight for the Scuderia. However, it seems like these issues won't be appearing for Ferrari in the upcoming race in Jeddah, as one of the biggest obstacles to overcome for the SF23 was the tyre degradation. This is why Sainz and Leclerc weren't able to go longer on the hard compound tyre, and this is why the RB19 has proven to be much better competitors for the long-term pace. But there is one reason that has aggravated the tyre degradation at Ferrari, something that won't happen in the following race, and that's the abrasive asphalt. Ever since the track was first introduced in Formula 1 in 2004, the asphalt in Bahrain hasn't been changed, which means that the abrasiveness is basically at the maximum possible level. While cars that tend to not suffer from tyre degradation due to the higher downforce settings, like the RB19, didn't find it very hard to compete on a track like this, the SF23 found the Bahrain GP to be a very demanding and challenging track for their tyres. Keep in mind that the tyre degradation is something that has hindered Ferrari's chances all season long in 2022, even on tracks that had much fresher asphalt and weren't that gruesome on their tyres. The only exception that they experienced was in Austria, where Leclerc and Sainz were able to go double the time that Verstappen did on the same tyre compound due to a better suspension. The qualifying laps are also something that we need to look at from the Bahrain GP, mostly because Ferrari was the faster car compared to Red Bull, even though the Austrian team locked up the front row for Sunday's start of the race. If we take a closer look at the data from the Bahrain GP, the story is kind of reverted, with Ferrari actually having a better qualifying pace as the SF23 was faster over more parts of the lap. However, Verstappen was able to take time in key areas around the circuit, and one of the reasons why the two-time world champion was able to dominate in a single lap performance was because of the downforce of the RB19. High-speed turns like turn 7 and 12 were ones where Verstappen was able to gain more time on Leclerc, and the Dutchman had a much better acceleration out of the tricky turn 10, where drivers tend to lock up on entry, whereas the Monegasque tends to gain most of the time down the straight into turn 11. This opens up a very interesting story. Red Bull doesn't seem to be the fastest car on the main straights after all. This was an area that the team used to dominate in the previous season, especially on tracks like Miami, where Verstappen was simply flying over the track and was faster up to 30 km an hour compared to Leclerc. This season, the story may be reverted, and it seems like the tracks that require a higher amount of downforce, more precisely the tracks with medium and high-speed corners, will have a more pleasant effect on the RB19. The top speed of Leclerc's SF23 was 298 km an hour, which is 3 km an hour faster compared to Verstappen, and this is definitely the opposite story of last year, where Leclerc was able to catch up to Verstappen through the high-speed sections and on corner exits, and the Dutchman was escaping on the long main straights. Verstappen, on the other hand, is now notably quicker compared to Leclerc in terms of entering the braking zone at turn 13, which yet again is highlighted by the crazy amount of downforce that the RB19 is able to generate. However, this doesn't help Verstappen that much, since the SF23 uses its low drag setup and superior acceleration as it enters turn 14. Even though Verstappen's acceleration is 6 km an hour faster than Leclerc's, it's not long until the Monegasque catches up with the speed and is able to go much quicker before the final timing line. Not many hoped that this would be the outcome of the 2023 season, but nonetheless we must look to the future, and the next race is 1 week ahead of us. Ferrari is very hopeful that the Jeddah Corniche circuit, which is probably the fastest track on the calendar and has corners that are basically entered and exited with full throttle, will definitely suit the SF23 much more than Bahrain. Frederic Vasseur, the team principal for Ferrari, feels like the team will be able to jump in and fix the tyre degradation issues for Jeddah very soon, as he went on to say, "A fast car in qualifying has to be able to be a fast car in the race. It's not a question of concept. We are convinced of our path and the developments in the pipeline." Furthermore, Vasseur went on to talk about the reliability issues that left Leclerc without a podium, saying that throughout the 6,000 or 7,000 kilometres of tests that have been conducted on the dyno, a problem of this nature hasn't occurred at all. The first suspicion that the team has is around the battery, but now that the Jeddah circuit will put more load on the front tyres and with a different structure of the asphalt, Ferrari has a lot to seek in the second race of the season. While Ferrari hopes that the Bahrain curse will strike them this time like it did with Verstappen last year, when the Dutchman failed to finish the race only to go on and win the championship, witchcraft will be everything but enough for the Maranello team to hope upon if they want to catch up with the flying Red Bulls ahead. On the other hand, Verstappen and Red Bull also understand that Jeddah will be a much bigger challenge to overcome than Bahrain, and the competition will be much closer than what was showcased in Bahrain. If this turns out to be the truth, then we're about to see a much slower Aston Martin as well, given the fact that the AMR23 takes most of its inspiration from the RB18, the 2022 Red Bull's Challenger that was truly an engineering masterpiece. The two-time world champion spoke about the upcoming race as he added, "Saudi is quite a different track to Bahrain. You have a lot more straights, fast corners, and a lot less degradation. I think here we were particularly good on the deg, so I do expect in terms of race pace that everyone is closer in Jeddah." With this in mind, it's going to be very interesting to see how the RB19 will go against the SF23, and right now, it seems like the Austrian team will have a proper challenge to hold off the Maranello team now that the following two races are favouring their fiercest rival more. Keep in mind that the Australian GP was the one that was vastly dominated by Ferrari last year, with Leclerc nowhere to be found ahead, and on top of that, the F175 suffered from extensive porpoising. These tracks tend to save the tyres more due to the asphalt composition, and they do not place a huge requirement on the downforce setup, so Red Bull will need an extremely strong setup to battle with Ferrari and, who knows, maybe Mercedes. We are expecting a very close battle ahead, and one thing that could definitely ruin the race's outcome in Jeddah is the potential engine penalty that Leclerc could face so early in the season. After Leclerc's engine failed to finish the race, the worst-case scenario for the Monegasque driver is that he would be forced to take new components due to him already reaching the limit of the available electronic units, and he could line up 10 places behind the original qualifying result. If this turns out to be the case, then we can do nothing more than hope that Leclerc will turn into Spa's version of Verstappen in 2022 and go on to challenge the Dutchman to a fair and square battle. But as of now, it seems like Red Bull's dominance will be hindered by the nature of the tracks and the nature of the SF23. So for us, regular Formula One fans, it seems like a very interesting race lies ahead at the Jeddah Corniche. What do you think is next for Red Bull after Ferrari's emergence from the miserable weekend in Bahrain? Do you think that Leclerc and Sainz can show Verstappen that the season is not over after just one race? Let us know in the comments below.